Ben Kwitek. I think I've met most of you and talked to most of you, but it's great that you're with us this morning. Thanks for that. And look forward to working with you more over the course of, I guess, the next almost 2 years, which is unbelievable that we're within this program now. So excited about it. I'm going to just run through some kind of background on, like, if people ask you, like, an innovation fellow, what does that mean? Like, what does innovation mean? What does C3 mean? So that you've got kind of that backdrop. It's very foundational. And it allows you then to talk about your projects with other people in the community, including potential donors or partners or other folks as you build this out. So I use the example here of the baobab tree from Africa. It's one of my favorites. So if you watch Disney movies, you've seen it in those for sure. But it's called the Tree of Life. And the legend in Africa is that the god or the gods were upset with this particular tree and they pulled it out of the ground and stuck it into the ground upside down. So it's known as the upside down tree because its foliage looks like a root system. But I love that metaphor for innovation because I think it's about turning things on their heads. It's about shaking things up, and it's also the lifeblood that kind of flows throughout our entire economy. Like, solving problems and changing things is really the only way we progress as a society, and that's all about innovation. So I created this baobab tree in Chat GPT, and I said put some innovative people below it, including Isaac Newton, because I thought he was appropriate given that the apple fell off of a tree and sort of sparked some of his theories, right? But we've got Elon Musk, whether you're a fan or not, I think most people would say he's innovative. Madame Curie next to Elon, and then Warren Buffett, the billionaire investor from Omaha, who's not innovative in a traditional sense, but innovative in that he's very patient and he's sort of reimagined investing on a global scale. And then next to him, you got Thomas Edison, of course, famous inventor, one of the most famous inventors of all time. And then Steve Jobs. You can't talk innovation without talking Steve Jobs, in part because he was so good at promoting himself and promoting Apple, which is what we need to do a little bit of for C3, right? Is get your stories out into the world, which Haley's doing a magnificent job already getting all of that content set up for us. So they're all sitting under the baobab tree and they're sharing 3 particular books, and we can decide later what those books are. All right. So what is innovation? When we teach basic innovation classes in the Bachelor of Innovation program, we've defined it as the transformation of ideas into impact. And why that's important is that everybody has ideas, but a lot of people don't do anything with them. So the transformational piece is the kind of is where the magic happens. That's where the rubber meets the road. And ultimately, you want to make an impact, because if you didn't want to make an impact, like, why get out of bed in the morning, right? Like, you want to change things, and the world has a billion problems. You don't even need to turn on your phone to be aware of them, right? But how do we fix those? Maybe with coming up with new ideas and solutions. So the image here of somebody kind of nurturing this sapling, I think, is apt, because innovation at the very beginning is very susceptible to being trampled on and torn up and eaten and destroyed. So when you come up with a new idea, we want to help you develop that and also help you with the scaffolding and the deer guard and whatever else we need around it so that it doesn't get trampled or eaten when it's early in the process. What is C3 innovation? So the 3 C's, hopefully you've got memorized, but curiosity to begin with, and we'll talk more about that, creativity, and then finally community. And when those 3 things come together, you get a really nice outcome generally, because you're bringing people who have questions, who want to listen, who want to learn, with their own individual ideas. I mean, you're 1 in 8 billion unless you've got an identical twin, but still you're 1 in 4 billion. And those odds are pretty amazing, right? The world needs you because no one else is like you. So, and then when those individuals all come together, and when you guys even meet in this room, you don't know where those conversations are going to lead. And those kind of collision spaces, that's really what made Renaissance Italy so magical, is you had painters meeting up with physicists who were meeting up with poets, all in the same venues. And that's what kind of relit the fire of invention and academics in Europe, were those collisions of people from various fields. All right. So where can we find innovation? I've got two contrasting images here. One is like blue sky, because we tend to think of like blue sky and clouds and dreaming when we think of innovation. And then also this image from Africa of an emerging city with their telecom and internet infrastructure. Imagine being the person like sent to that pole to like find where there was a problem. Like you'd be like, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life on this one particular pole with all the complexity there. But sometimes innovation feels like that a little bit, right? Or the new research you're doing, it's a bit of a tangled mess. And you've got to figure out, how do I untangle that and how do I organize it in such a way that others in the community can readily get it? Because unless you know this pole and you're that expert for that part of Africa, you're not going to make headway diving into that. I mean, we could take the best IT people from campus and say, hey, can you figure this out? And I think the answer would be probably no, or like, give me the rest of my life and then I'll give you some answers. So a few things I want to point to. Why don't we, before we do that, so that I'm not talking as much, why don't we think for a minute, like, where do you find innovative ideas? Like, how does innovation strike you? Anybody want to throw out any thoughts, or when do you come up with good ideas? Even place, time, social setting. I know I was reading an article recently that said a lot of people have ideas when they're in the shower in the morning, partly because that's one of the few times in our lives where we're disconnected from our mobile devices. I like to tell my students they ask me about my inventions. So I'm up to like, I guess, 25 patents. And one of them is for a portable cinnamon roll. If you've ever been to Taco Bell and had their Cinnabon Delights, that's my invention. And so students immediately like, well, how did you come up with a portable cinnamon roll? First of all, I say it's not rocket science, right? But then second, I say that I was in an airport, a busy airport, and there was a Cinnabon store where they sell these giant cinnamon rolls. And I was just watching people, because I had time to kill before my flight. And I was watching people buy these giant cinnamon rolls, like 12,000 calories. And they're also expensive and just hard to eat. So as people were trying to eat them, like they were getting frosting on their cheek and things were falling down the front of their jacket. And I'm like, but they're smiling, like they're loving it. So like there's something good about this story, even though there's a lot of mess around it. So for whatever reason, in that moment, I got the inspiration of, what if that cinnamon roll was folded inside out like a pair of socks? And it was actually a faulty metaphor, because socks, when you fold them inside out, generally then the rough part is on the outside. But that's what crossed my mind. And I'm like, what if you had the frosting and the filling and other stuff on the inside, and then the outside was smooth and not as messy? And then what if it was like the size of a golf ball that was freezable and microwavable, to where like you could have a tube on your way to work, you could just tip back cinnamon rolls. So I called my patent attorney from the airport and I said, I kind of want to apply for this portable cinnamon roll patent. So he walked me through it and he's like, first of all, it's a bad idea, because food is hard to patent. And also, do people want a portable cinnamon roll? And I'm like, I think maybe they do. So we filed for the patent. Long story short, 2 patents, and yeah, General Mills and Taco Bell, and it's made me some money, thankfully. So, but again, shows that like weird location, airport, lightning can strike, right? So you've got to be kind of open to that, I think, at any point. So kind of fun. Okay. So one place to find innovation is with people, right? We're social creatures, and most of what we create relates to people in one form or another. Even if it's AI, it's still being used by people, right? So the robots haven't completely taken over yet. As I said, yet. Number 2 is problems. So Edison once said that problems are just opportunities of workflows. So you've got to look at, where is there friction, or where are there people that are upset or spilling frosting on their face and clothes? Like there's got to be a better way. It's that Shark Tank kind of concept. And a lot of times, since people don't want to focus on the problems because it's negative, but if you quickly say, okay, there's a problem, I'm going to study it and then find a way to fix it. The thing I would suggest there is, Einstein famously said that like spend 95% of your time on the problem and 5% on the solution, because you've got to really understand the problem, which I think is good advice for all the projects you're working on too, like really understanding like, okay, what is it that you're trying to address or solve or fix, and knowing it. Third thing here would be experimentation. So the scientists in the room can talk about this, and the researchers, right? Like you've got to try things, and okay, we've got a control group, or how does this work, or is this better? And do we have proof, or do we have something we can point to and say, here's why it's better? It's not just so and so thinks this is a good idea. Although sometimes we use that form of kind of affirmation as well. Like I'll say, Seth thinks it's a good idea, so we should just do it.
The opposite.
Right? Or the opposite sometimes. Yeah, that's also true. All right, so for diverse teams and collaboration is what we were talking about earlier, right? The more diversity you have in a room, in theory, the more unique combinations you should get. So that's why like symphony orchestras are magical, is because you've got all these different sounds and people merging together with a similar set of music, and those combinations are fun. Or think of like a jazz club and how they start improvising. That's when it gets really interesting. So culture, certain places have more of a culture of innovation and change, and other places are more like staid and no, we're going to do it this way. The example I use of a non-innovative culture is the IRS. No one's a fan to begin with because we pay our money to them. But like if you have a problem with the IRS, you can't generally call them. You can't email them. Sometimes they'll make you fax them, which is really insane. Like if you want a meeting with an IRS agent, fax us a request. And it's like, who has a fax machine anymore? Like, do we need to go to Western Colorado and dig up dinosaur bones and find the fax machine next to it? That would be my thought. So culture is very important. And then think of like Silicon Valley companies. I mean, I know it's overstated, but there is kind of a culture of let's get a pizza. Let's figure out how we can fix this. Let's just dive in. Let's not be afraid to make mistakes. Abundance or scarcity. So if you have a lot of resources, you can be innovative. And if you don't have many resources, you can be innovative. Sometimes the middle ground is where you don't want to be with innovation. Like I've got just enough money to fund this, so I'm not going to be super creative. It's almost better to say, I've got $100 million to fund this. Let's pull out all the stops. Or I've got $10 to fund this. Because now we've really got to bootstrap. Like we've got to figure out how to do this with nothing. Both of those can cause additional creativity and spark innovation. And then 7, luck. I think anybody who doesn't include luck is sort of deceiving themselves. Because right place, right time, right people, you just never know where something is going to lead. I tell my students that once I was on an airplane from Dallas to Denver, and I was upgraded to first class, which was really nice. I mean, that doesn't happen as much post-COVID for some reason. It seems like everybody's a VIP or airplanes don't have first classes anymore. But the person I sat next to then I got talking to, and by the end of the flight, we exchanged contact information, and then he invested in one of my startup companies a month later. And had I not been on that flight and not talked to him, that would have never happened. So sometimes just chalk it up to serendipity. And then innovation is everywhere and nowhere kind of at the same time. This becomes like a philosophical, like dark matter physics question. But it is kind of all around us at all times. But then also it's sometimes nowhere to be found. It's like the tree falling in the forest. Maybe no one hears it if no one's there, I guess. Okay, we'll keep moving. All right, so let's talk about the 3 C's of C3 a little bit more. So we'll start with curiosity. I thought we had to show Curious George just because it's a fun image. So what is curiosity all about? The definition here that I like from Singapore Management University is the desire to know, to see, or to experience that motivates exploratory behavior. Notice how they spell behavior because they do it in the British form. Information seeking and learning. So basically, you're trying to learn. And I think we lose some of that sense of curiosity as we get more educated and as we get older, because we think we know some of the pathways already. And asking questions, it can be annoying to people. So we're like, I'm not going to ask any questions. At some point when we were kids, our parents told us to shut up and stop asking questions. And we literally took their advice. A lot of people did. But we need to be that inquisitive person. If you think about a cocktail party you've been to recently, who was one of the more interesting people you met? Probably the person that was asking you questions. Dale Carnegie had it right in How to Win Friends and Influence People. Use their name and ask them questions, and they tend to like you more. It's very simple, but very true. Okay, so we'll keep moving. Asking why and why not more often. John F. Kennedy famously said that other people ask why, and he asked why not. And I thought there's a nice kind of sense of positivity to that. That's what drove in part, the race to the moon, right? Is saying, why not? Why can't we do this? Okay. So who's the most curious person you know, and why would you say they're the most curious person? Anybody want to throw something out? You'll now note that things highlighted in yellow are discussion items. So I thought, speaking of monkeys, I thought this was a funny image, and I'll show the video. So you may have seen this is a monkey that took a selfie. So the monkey took this image of itself in Southeast Asia. It took the phone from a photographer, and he was setting the stage for photographing the monkeys. But the monkey literally grabbed the thing and started pushing buttons. And like, it's such an adorable photo, right? Like, how could you not love that monkey with that image? But the photographer then, so the image went viral, and the photographer said, I own the copyright on it. And this case went through federal district court, went to the Court of Appeals. Like, who owns a copyright? Does the monkey own the copyright? And if so, should the monkey earn royalties on its image being used all over the world? So I thought this quick clip here, news clip, was kind of informational.
So photographer doesn't own the copyright. The monkey doesn't either. Nobody owns the copyright. It's in the public domain. And sometimes that's what happens when you take pictures of good-looking monkeys. British.
So no one's making any money out of it. So I thought we'd switch from a monkey image to a cute baby image, just because you can never go wrong with a cute baby image, right? But there's a quote here from Deepak Chopra: see the world as if for the first time, see it through the eyes of a child, and you will suddenly find that you are free. And I like the sort of the profound nature of that quote. But if you think about a baby, their brain doubles in the first year after birth. Imagine if we kept that pace up throughout our lives. I mean, it goes to the penny compounding thing that we talked about over at El Pomar. Like, we would have brains the size of elephants or larger, and we couldn't carry them around. 1 million new neural connections every second. So again, it's just exploding, that brain is. And 90% of brain growth by age 5, which is kind of sad that we only leave 10% for when we're in school effectively. This also highlights the importance of, like, having your kids be creative and sort of encouraging that, right? Maybe playing Mozart, as they say. Okay, we'll keep moving. All right, so ideas. One of the things we talk about with innovation is ideas and impact. So what is an idea? We've got an image here of Rodin's The Thinker, which sort of represents someone thinking and trying to ponder and come up with something. So everything starts with an idea, is what they say, and I like that philosophy, right? That it's conceptual, at least to begin with. Idea Note defines it as a thought or collection of thoughts that generate in the mind. When I was in the Netherlands recently, I took a picture of, they had a new thinker, and it was depicted as a female instead of the traditional male, and it was in their kind of public square in The Hague. And I thought it was a kind of a nice representation that thinking comes in all forms, right? It's not just, okay, you've got to be in this pose or in this place or this kind of person to be a useful thinker. So how much time do you think each day? I think one of the things that studies show is that we've all gotten so busy, we don't have time to think anymore. We're kind of on autopilot. And that's notoriously dangerous, right? Because you're doing things without thinking. Like, do you remember your drive to work this morning? You might not, because you've done it before, and like, you're just, maybe your car's autonomous too, which also helps you Waymo here. But for the most part, we kind of do those things on autopilot. So do you set aside, anybody want to talk about this? Like, do you set aside time to just think? Or again, does it sort of just happen when you have a moment that you're not on your phone or someone's not in front of you? So it's time well spent, kind of the same thought. Okay, we'll keep moving so you guys don't get bored. Finding and developing ideas. So we've got lightning in a bottle here with a nice ocean sunset too. So it's an attractive bottle. How do we find ideas? One, I think, is this have a dream idea. Like, where is it you want to go? What's your destination? And then you back into that, or you reverse engineer from your dream destination. So if we all decide as a group we want to go to Maui tomorrow, we're pretty sure we're not going to drive there, right? So that starts making choices for us, the place we want to go, which I think is valuable. Recorded. So again, when you have that lightning in a bottle or that idea, try to put it down somewhere so that you don't lose it. And then you're like, oh, what was that idea I had 3 days ago that was going to change the world? Anybody ever have the feeling when you're tired, you think you've come up with a world-changing idea, and then when you reflect on it later, you're like, that was just really dumb. I was just tired. um, I did that once after flying to Europe. I was jet lagged and I woke up like after sleeping for like an hour and I wrote down this whole paragraph. And I'm like, this is going to be like the ticket to Forbes billionaire list. Like, this is going to change everything. And then I woke up like 6 hours later and I read through it and I'm like, this was complete rubbish. Like, this has no value at all, commercial or otherwise. Okay, we'll keep moving. Research it. So again, don't need to tell everybody in the room that, but like, what have other people done so that you're not reinventing the wheel? And how can you bolt on to what others have done or create new machines or new pathways? Socialize it, to talk to people about it, because that's going to be very helpful. And I've got an example later on that will demonstrate that really well. And then revise it. Nothing's perfect on the first draft. I don't know how people did PhD dissertations before computers, because cut and pasting is what it was all about for me. Like, if I couldn't have cut and pasted, I don't think I could have ever gotten through it, because I didn't have things in the right place. All right, and then execute it. Finally, that brings the action piece. So creativity, let's talk about that. So Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, I think it's a nice representation of creativity for a host of reasons. It's that bouncing ideas, it's rapid iteration, and that energy is contagious. And there's like almost like a nuclear reaction where you're getting more than the sum of the parts, kind of a feeling. So enhancing creativity, we've got these brushes here. One way to do this is to give yourself permission to be creative. I think we sometimes are our own worst critics. And we think, what do I know about painting? What do I know about writing? What do I know about speaking? But we have to like give ourselves a little bit of slack. Find inspiration. So we talked about that earlier. That might be, in the shower. That might be a mountain drive. That might be playing chess. That might be watching Jimmy Fallon. Whatever it is that allows you to be inspired. Change space and time. Over the summer, we did a workshop at Stanford's design school, a group of us. And that was one of the things they said, is that if you're having trouble like in the room, go outside and like change it up. The sun, the wind, the sky, all of that will change the way you think about everything, because context is sometimes decisive. Find cool collaborators. So again, that diversity of thought and people who view the world through a different lens. And this is something I think everybody in the world needs to hear, because we tend to group with people that think like us. Whether it's on Facebook or whether it's the news channel we watch, and it's not so helpful. I actually kind of enjoy watching content from people who I don't agree with, because I think it's helpful. Okay, start. Finally, if you never get started, you never get there. And then have fun along the way, and give yourself grace, which relates to give yourself permission. But if it's not the Van Gogh you thought it was going to be when you're at Painting with a Twist, give yourself a break on that. It might have been the line. Okay, we'll keep moving. So we've got a discussion question. When was the last time you were #creative? Like, where it really kind of made an impact on you? I think when we're asked this question, we probably all realize, sadly, that it's not enough. Like, we're not creative. We need to be creative a greater percentage of the time, basically. But sometimes just the daily grind doesn't allow us to be. But I think recognizing that is probably the first step to fixing it, and like saying, hey, all right, I got to give myself permission to be more creative and have more fun, and call up friends and say, let's all make dinner together, or let's all, play outside. Let's just do something fun. All right, we'll keep moving. So community, we've got these AI meerkats here. And you've got to love a good meerkat just because they look like they'd be fun to hang out with, right? And they're kind of like group minded. They're not super individual, like get lost kind of creatures. So I want to tell a story here about two chapels, and I edited this picture just so that no one would be offended by it. So this is, of course, the Sistine Chapel, and this is Michelangelo, right? And this is 1508 Italy. So the Pope commissioned Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And if you've been to Italy in the Sistine Chapel, I mean, it's pretty high, right? So he's up there on his back on scaffolding, painting these detailed masterpieces for the course of a few years, right? And while he's doing it, the church is still open. So people come and go, people talk to him. They're like, hey, Mike, what's up? And maybe they didn't say that, but like, I imagine they might have. And his friends come and there's church services, the choir probably practices. People probably ask him, hey, who's the dude there that the godlike figure is touching? And he's like, oh, that's Adam. And like, he's getting feedback from everybody. But what people don't know, and of course the Sistine Chapel, more than 500 years later is something still that's revered and we all go to visit, and it's one of the great art masterpieces of the world. What people don't realize is that at the same time the Pope commissioned Michelangelo to do the Sistine Chapel, he commissioned another artist to paint the ceiling of another chapel in Italy. But this artist was very different than Michelangelo. He said, while I work, I can have no distractions. The church must be closed, and no one can talk to me or visit during the course of the entire painting episode. So they literally locked down the church for like a year. He's in there every day on a scaffold painting. And then they open up the church, they look up, and it's so awful they paint over it. Why? Was he not as good an artist as Michelangelo? Maybe, maybe not. But he was hired by the Pope, and the Pope commissioned Michelangelo. So the Pope probably had advisors who knew art. So he probably was a good artist. The only difference really in those two variables is one had interaction with people and the other was isolated and thought they were doing an amazing job by themselves in their own little bubble. So I think we need to be careful of that we don't want to be in silos. We want to be in the community, which is the third C of C3, right? Like we want to have that interaction because that makes us a better artist, and ultimately that results in a better masterpiece for everybody to rally around and observe. I have made the comment before that since it was painted over, we don't know what it looked like, and there weren't, cameras to take pictures of it at the time. But it is possible that other artist was like a Picasso in the making, and he did something really like abstract, and no one understood it in 1508. Like maybe he was really ahead of his time, but I don't think so. I think that when you're in a silo, when you're in a foxhole or a bubble by yourself, it's not really good for you. I mean, that's why they put terrorists in solitary confinement, right? Because it breaks them down. It's awful. And we can't have that as innovators. So, all right, we'll keep moving. Do you let people see your work and participate in the development of your work? Or are you one of those people that says, let me get this done, I'll show it to you when it's done? Or does it depend on what you're doing? And that's one of the things that with your fellowship with C3, we really are encouraging you to do is to let the light in, let people interact with you to the extent you can, and make it a better project so that it can potentially, lead to more work for you, or more work in a good way, like things you love doing, and also maybe more funding and more prestige for the university, and like everybody wins, I think, if this works well. All right, so finding your community, there's an African proverb: if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's pretty profound, right? So some suggestions with community is start wherever you are, so the people around you isn't a bad place to start. Ask for support because people don't mind it as much as we think sometimes. Solve problems, demonstrate the win-win. So this is something I've learned from business negotiations. Just because I want it doesn't mean they want it, and you've got to persuade them why it's a good thing for them. I'll never forget one of my patents. I went to a company and visited with them, and the manager, mid-level manager of this company, said, okay, let me just lay this out for you because you're not getting it. He's like, if we buy your patent and it's wildly successful, I might get a promotion or I might get a $20,000 bonus. The company will make millions, but that's it. Like, that's all I get. But if we buy this from you and it fails, I might get fired. So I don't have a lot of incentive to do this with you because my upside is 20 grand. My downside is losing my job and career. So you've got to look at it from the other side, like the organization or the people you're working with. What's the win for them? And sometimes we forget that. We're so focused on what we want in the win. And then final point here is maintain the caring. So it's easy to care at the beginning. It's harder to care 6 months into the project or 2 years into the project because there's new shiny things, right? So you've got to kind of find ways to, with your project, do a date night, if you will, that makes it fun and fresh again. All right. So impact, a moon crater here. Steve Jobs once said we're here to make a dent in the universe, which is another kind of fun way to say that. So a couple things here with respect to making an impact is you've got the feasibility question for your project, whether it's innovation related or otherwise. And this is the science or engineering. Can it be done, what you're proposing? And if the answer is no to that, you really don't need to go a whole lot farther. Because if you can't develop a black box that powers the entire country, then marketing it doesn't make a lot of sense and sharing it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So that's kind of the first gate, if you will. The second is the humanity or psychology question of do people want it? So you've come up with this project, this idea. It's feasible, like it's definitely possible, but now does it add value to people? Do people say, I want that, or that's great? And that's kind of think about the new iPhone with Apple, like the iPhone Air. It was feasible, right? Probably very difficult technically to make it as thin as it is. Now, did people want it? I think the initial sales are showing people do want a thin phone that's called an Air. And then the third thing is the business or economics question, will it make money? And that's the viability, like would it grow or does it have legs? And I think where these three intersect is often where innovation and success lie. Because if you're missing one of the three, it's difficult for the other two to carry the weight of the project. So in looking at what you're doing, I think it's worthwhile to ask these questions. Can it be done? Do people want it? And will it make money? And not so much commercially for what you're doing, but like, will it find supporters? Could it get grants? Could it get donors? Could it get the university to put funds behind it? That might be a difficult bar, but you've got the three questions, right? Okay, we'll keep moving. So the group question here is, which of the three is your best and which of the three is your weakest of your particular project? Is the best part the desirability, but the viability is a little bit questionable, or likely one of the three is stronger than the other, and likely one of the three is weaker. So maybe just think through that. And we don't need to ask you those questions now. We'll keep moving here. Anybody watch Ted Lasso? So I thought this was also appropriate for teamwork. So we'll watch this real quick video. So Ted Lasso, the storyline on Apple TV is an American football coach from Wichita, Kansas, played by Jason Sudeikis, goes to England to coach a professional soccer team there and knows nothing about soccer or football, which is what it's called there. But one of the first things he does is he puts this paper sign that says "Believe" above the exit of the locker room. And this becomes kind of a symbol of his entire coaching mechanism. I love that clip though, because I do think a lot of achievement is based on just getting people to believe. And once you've got them like all in, like they were as they were running out of the locker room, like the best teams you can beat because you've got that esprit de corps and that kind of commonality with the group. So speaking of believing and positivity, I want to just run through a few things here just because I thought it was good to do. So in 1798, Thomas Malthus, the British economist, said that we were going to have massive food shortages and the earth was basically going to die because we didn't have enough food to feed the population. If you look at the data then from 30 years later, you can see food production, global population, agricultural land were all pretty much matched. Fast forward to 2010, agricultural land hasn't increased that much. Global population has increased a ton, but global food production has increased faster than land and population. And this is primarily due to innovation, right? Like we've become better growers and better farmers because of things like drones now, that we can keep better track of how much water our fields need. So I like the optimism in this, that you can say the sky is falling, but guess what? We can innovate our way out of it. Thomas Watson, the CEO of IBM, I love IBM's logo from the 1940s. It's really cool, isn't it? Like I almost feel like as a nerd, I could make t-shirts of that and people would buy them because it just looks fun. But he said there was a world market for 5 computers, and this was the CEO of basically a computer company in 1943. Fast forward to today, over 2 billion actual computers and then 7.3 billion smartphones, which are computers for sure. And 90+% of Americans have smartphones with them at any given moment. So like here was an expert saying that the future wasn't that big and he completely dropped the ball, like he completely missed it. Gordon Moore in 1970, the founder of Intel, had a famous law: the number of transistors will double approximately every 2 years. And sure enough, we've seen that. And that's what's powering AI. And that's what's powering that iPhone that's in your pocket or purse. Elon Musk, in 1990, there were 193 million vehicles in the US. In 2022, the last year that's available, 297 plus million. And in 1990, the Clean Air Act was passed. So if you look at what's happened, Most particulate matter, most pollutants have drastically declined. Our air is cleaner now than it was in 1990, despite the fact we've got more vehicles on the road. What's that a function of? Certainly the law, but also it's a function of more efficient engines, electric vehicles, smarter decisions on design for aerodynamics and other things. So we've gotten better. And if you fly to LA, the area in LA was notoriously smoggy. It's rare now when you fly into LA and it's really smoggy. Like it's relatively clean, despite the fact everybody in LA has like 5 cars and 2 of them are G-Wagons, which aren't very fuel efficient. Although there's an electric G-Wagon now. This is Amica, the most humanoid robot. If you were at the launch event, you saw Amica. And there's a decent chance that Amica might be coming back to campus. But 2 questions here.
Very high.
Very high.
That is probably.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool because there's only 300 of them, I think, in the world right now. So we'll be one of the first universities in the country to have a humanoid robot that's powered by the latest AI that can, I think, do amazing things, not only for researchers here on campus, but as a community engagement tool, have Amica go to high schools and talk to them about UCCS and career plans and other things. So 2 questions here. What will you achieve with your project, and how will your innovation help make a difference in the world? I think those are important things to keep in mind and not lose sight of. And I'm almost done. I got like 1 more slide left, or 2 more slides. This is from Steve Jobs, who died on October 5th, 2011. Hard to believe it's been that long. This was a quote that he and his marketing team came up with, and I love it, so I'll actually read it if you don't mind. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things, they push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. I love this. So I've got this hanging behind my desk in my home office. So this was one of Steve Jobs' again favorite quotes. And I had the good fortune once of being invited to Mark Zuckerberg's house, and he had this hanging in his family room as well. So I thought, if it's good enough for Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, it's probably good enough for me. So I bought it, and I know I hang it in my home office, but I read it once in a while because there are those days when you think that you're the round peg in the square hole, or you're the misfit, or you're the rebel. But that's probably where you want to be a lot of the time, because that means you're pushing the envelope, that means you're changing things, and that means you're innovating, which is a very, very good thing. So finally, an AI-generated image of a baobab tree, and thank you. So hopefully this was helpful in kind of giving you context on innovation, C3, and just some ways to think about innovation and thinking creatively. And we'll talk more certainly as we go through this program together. So thanks everybody. I'll turn it over to Seth.
Yeah,
Do you want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.